of Florence in the 1400s was a city of breathtaking beauty, a place where soaring domes touched the sky and masterpieces of art filled every corner. But do not be fooled by the elegant frescoes and the grand palaces. Beneath that shimmering surface, a raw, brutal power struggle unfolded daily. It was not just the famous Medici family pulling all the strings. Far from it. Deep within the city's stone walls, powerful organizations dictated who lived, who died, and who controlled the very breath of the Republic. These were not shadowy secret societies meeting in hidden cellars. They were the guilds, and their influence was so absolute it would shock you. You might think of them as simple trade associations, but imagine them instead as ancient corporations with armies of workers, vaults bursting with gold, and the power to make or break kings. They shaped everything. Their grip on Florence was a stranglehold, silent but crushing. Number 7. Arte dei Giudici e Notai. The scribbling of a notary's quill was a sound of absolute authority in Florence. In the Florentine Republic, nothing of consequence happened without a document, a signature, and the official seal of a notary. These men, members of the Arte dei Giudici e Notai, the Guild of Judges and Notaries, held the keys to legal certainty and, by extension, immense power. Their guild hall buzzed with activity, a constant hum of clerks preparing contracts, wills, and official decrees. Every land transfer, every marriage agreement, every business deal, every court ruling required their expertise. Without them, the intricate machinery of Florentine society simply would not turn. A typical day for a notary could begin before dawn, attending to a wealthy merchant's last will and testament, dictating precise clauses about inheritance and charitable donations. Later, he might find himself at the Palazzo della Signoria, drafting the official decrees of the city government, transforming the spoken words of the priors into binding law. Then, perhaps, a visit to the bustling Mercato Vecchio, to record the sale of a ship's cargo, ensuring both buyer and seller were legally protected and their agreements properly documented. Their presence was everywhere, essential to the daily pulse of the city. The training to become a notary was rigorous and long, demanding years of study in Latin, law, and rhetoric. Boys as young as 10 would begin their apprenticeship, copying documents by hand, learning the intricate forms and formulas necessary for legal writing. They memorized precedents and understood the nuances of Roman law, which formed the basis of Florentine legal principles. By the time they were full members of the guild, they possessed an education that few others could match, a deep understanding of the city's legal framework and its historical foundations. This intellectual rigor set them apart and ensured their continued relevance. The notaries were trusted figures, often acting as advisors to powerful families and merchants. They held personal secrets, financial dealings, and family disputes in their confidential files. The meticulous records they kept were not just for the present moment. They became the historical memory of the city, providing proof of ownership, lineage, and official acts for generations. One example involved the inheritance of a significant estate in 1435. A dispute arose between two branches of a family, each claiming rightful ownership. The case stretched on for months in the Florentine courts. It was only when a notary presented a meticulously preserved deed from 1380, detailing the original purchase and its subsequent transfer, that the rightful heir was determined. The document, crisp and clear, ended the conflict. The judges, the Giudici, were the pinnacle of legal authority. They presided over the city's courts, interpreting the complex web of statutes and customs that governed Florentine life. Their decisions had profound effects on property, commerce, and personal liberty. A merchant accused of fraud, a noble embroiled in a land dispute, a common citizen seeking justice for a wrong all would eventually stand before a judge from this guild. The weight of their judgments was immense, shaping the destinies of individuals and families across the Republic. The members of the Arte dei Giudici e Notai often held key positions within the Florentine government, the Signoria. Their legal knowledge made them indispensable to the practical administration of the city. They served as ambassadors to other states, their diplomatic skills honed by years of intricate legal negotiation. They drafted treaties, advised on foreign policy and ensured that Florence's interests were protected in a constantly shifting political landscape. Giovanni Cavalcanti, a prominent notary in the early 1400s, served multiple terms as a prior, one of the 9 supreme magistrates of Florence. His legal acumen was highly valued in discussions about new taxes and trade agreements. The wealth of many notaries and judges was not always as obvious as that of a banker or a wool merchant. Their power lay in influence and access, rather than massive inventories of goods or vast sums of liquid capital. However, fees for their services, especially for complex cases or for drafting documents for the wealthiest families, could be substantial. Many amassed significant property through their earnings, building comfortable homes and investing in land. Their status was often a reflection of their intellectual capital, a valued commodity in a city that prized knowledge and order. The guild also played a role in public life beyond legal matters. They were deeply involved in the administration of justice for the city's charitable institutions and hospitals. They ensured that bequests were properly administered and that the poor and sick received the aid intended for them by wealthy donors. A record from 1442 shows a notary overseeing the transfer of funds from the estate of a deceased merchant to the hospital of Santa Maria Nuova, ensuring the money was used for its intended purpose of providing care for the sick. The importance of the arte dei giudici e notai cannot be overstated. Their very existence underscored Florence's commitment to a rule of law, however imperfect it might sometimes be. They provided the framework that allowed the city's complex economy and social structure to function. Without the careful documentation of their notaries and the considered judgments of their judges, disputes would have escalated into chaos, property rights would have dissolved, and the vast commercial network of Florence would have fractured. Their quiet, methodical work formed the bedrock upon which all other Florentine power was built. Number 6. Arte dei Medici e Speziali. Imagine a guild that included the people who healed you, the people who sold you spices, and the people who painted the most breathtaking art you have ever seen. In Florence, this was the Arte dei Medici e Speziali, the Guild of Doctors and Apothecaries. Their guild hall was not just a meeting place for healers and pharmacists, it was also a hub for some of the greatest artistic minds of the Renaissance. This combination seems strange at first glance, but there was a powerful logic to it, rooted in the very materials they handled. Apothecaries ground herbs and spices for medicines, but they also ground pigments for paints. This shared skill with mortars and pestles brought these diverse professions together under one powerful banner. The Medici, the doctors, were figures of immense respect and sometimes dread. Their knowledge of the human body, albeit limited by the science of the era, was sought by everyone, from the poorest laborer to the wealthiest banker. They examined urine, felt pulses, and prescribed remedies, often involving complex concoctions of herbs, minerals, and sometimes less conventional ingredients. A prominent doctor like Maestro Niccolo di Antonio, active in the early 1400s, might be called to the bedside of a dying noble one day, then consult on a sudden plague outbreak among the city's poor the next. Their work was vital, especially during times of epidemic illness, when fear gripped the city. Speziali, the apothecaries, were the suppliers of much more than just medicine. Their shops were treasure troves of exotic goods. Alongside dried herbs and strange powders for healing, they sold rare spices from the East: cinnamon, cloves, pepper, which were immensely valuable commodities. They also dealt in perfumes, waxes, and dyes. For artists, the apothecaries were the essential source of pigments: lapis lazuli for brilliant blues, crushed insects for rich reds, various earths for browns and yellows. A master painter could spend a fortune on pigments alone, and the apothecary was the gatekeeper to this vibrant palette. This unique combination meant the guild was a powerful force in both health and culture. Members of this guild held significant social standing. Doctors often served as personal physicians to the most influential families, gaining intimate knowledge of their health and sometimes their secrets. This close access could translate into political influence. an apothecary's shop, bustling with customers from all walks of life, served as an important center for news and gossip, making the proprietor a well-informed individual in the city's daily flow. The inclusion of painters within this guild was a defining characteristic of Florentine art. Great masters like Giotto, whose revolutionary frescoes adorned churches across Italy, were members of the Arte dei Medici e Speziali. Later, figures like Masaccio and even a young Leonardo da Vinci, though he hated the restrictions of guild life, were associated with it. This meant that the creation of art was not just a spiritual or intellectual pursuit, it was a trade, an economic activity governed by the same rules and regulations as other crafts. Guild statutes dictated apprenticeship terms, quality standards for materials, and even the prices artists could charge for their work. Consider the immense financial power this represented. The vast sums spent on pigments by churches and wealthy patrons from monumental artworks flowed through the apothecaries. The fees paid to master physicians by the elite were substantial. These economic flows contributed to the guild's overall wealth and influence within the city's economy. The guild itself owned property, collected dues from its members, and invested in public works. They were one of the guilds that contributed significantly to the building of the Duomo's dome, a symbol of Florentine civic pride. The guild also played a role in public health, though their efforts were limited by the scientific understanding of the period. They oversaw the quality of drugs sold, attempting to prevent quackery and ensure that apothecaries were selling legitimate remedies. During outbreaks of plague, doctors from the guild were on the front lines, risking their own lives to treat the sick. A chilling record from the Black Death in 1348 notes that many doctors and apothecaries perished alongside their patients, a testament to their dedication, despite the limitations of their medical knowledge. Beyond their practical functions, the Arte dei Medici Speziali fostered a vibrant intellectual environment. The doctors engaged in philosophical discussions about the human body and the nature of disease. The apothecaries, with their knowledge of chemistry and botany, were often at the forefront of scientific observation. And the artists, of course, were constantly pushing the boundaries of human creativity and technical skill. This blend of practical application, scientific inquiry, and artistic genius made the guild unique and deeply influential in shaping the intellectual and cultural landscape of Florence. They were not just a guild of tradesmen, they were patrons of knowledge and beauty. The connection between medicine, commerce, and art, seemingly disparate fields, was seamlessly woven together by the Arte dei Medici Speziali, reflecting a holistic view of life and human endeavor that was characteristic of the Florentine Renaissance. Their power was a quiet one, rooted in the essential needs of the body and the enduring desires of the soul. Number 5. Arte della Seta. If you wanted to see the epitome of luxury and global trade, woven into one exquisite fabric, he looked to Florence's Arte della Seta, the Silk Weavers and Merchants Guild. While wool had been the backbone of Florence's economy for centuries, silk represented the city's ambition, its embrace of high fashion, and its reach across continents. This guild dealt in shimmering brocades, delicate velvets, and gossamer damasks, fabrics so fine and expensive they were worn only by royalty, powerful nobles, and the very wealthiest merchants and popes. The journey of silk began far away, in distant lands like China and Persia, where silkworms spun their precious cocoons. The raw silk threads would travel along dangerous trade routes, crossing deserts and seas, before finally arriving in the bustling workshops of Florence. Here, under the watchful eyes of the Arte della Seta, these threads were transformed by skilled artisans into works of art. The process was incredibly complex and labor-intensive, requiring immense expertise. Weavers, often working on massive looms, meticulously interlaced thousands of threads to create intricate patterns. Dyers, using rare and expensive pigments like cochineal for vibrant reds or indigo for deep blues, achieved colors that seemed to glow. But embroiderers added pearls, gold thread, and jewels to create garments that sparkled. Each step, from the boiling of the raw silk to make it supple, to the final pressing of the finished cloth, was a testament to Florentine craftsmanship and innovation. The guild maintained strict quality controls, ensuring that Florentine silk was always of the highest standard, commanding premium prices across Europe. The wealth generated by the arte della seta was staggering. A single bolt of silk could cost more than a small house, and the demand for these luxury goods was constant among the European elite. Florentine silk merchants traveled to royal courts in England, France, and Spain, displaying their exquisite wares. They attended trade fairs in Bruges and Lyon, forging connections and closing deals that brought immense fortunes back to Florence. The Medici family themselves invested heavily in the silk trade, recognizing its potential for immense profit. The Guild Hall of the Arte della Seta was a grand building befitting its wealthy members. It housed not only meeting rooms but also a court, where disputes between members were resolved and where apprenticeships were formally registered. The guild regulated every aspect of the silk trade, from the training of new apprentices, often a 7 to 10 year process, to the types of looms that could be used, and even the dimensions of finished cloths. This control ensured consistency and prevented fraud, protecting the guild's reputation and profitability. Many of the most prominent families in Florence, after the Medici, gained their fortunes through the silk trade. The Pitti family, for instance, known for the vast Pitti Palace, had significant investments in silk. The guild's members, through their accumulated wealth, became important patrons of the arts, commissioning paintings, sculptures, and architectural projects that further enriched the city's cultural landscape. They also contributed generously to civic projects, enhancing their standing and influence. The Arte della Seta was not just about luxury goods, it was about innovation. As demand for silk grew, Florentine artisans developed new techniques and patterns, constantly pushing the boundaries of textile design. They experimented with different weaves, creating new textures and effects. They copied designs from the East, but also created their own unique Florentine style, which became highly sought after. This constant pursuit of excellence ensured Florence remained at the forefront of the European luxury textile market. The guild's political influence was undeniable. With so much wealth concentrated in their hands, silk merchants frequently held positions in the Signoria, the city's ruling body. Their commercial interests often shaped Florentine foreign policy, as they lobbied for favorable trade agreements and protection for their valuable shipments traveling across Europe. They understood the complexities of international markets and brought this crucial perspective to the governing councils. The Arte della Seta symbolized Florence's transition from a purely industrial powerhouse to a center of sophisticated luxury production. It demonstrated the city's ability to adapt, innovate, and thrive in new economic sectors. The rustle of a silk gown, the gleam of a velvet doublet, these were not just fashion statements, they were direct reflections of the immense power and global reach of Florence's silk merchants. They wrapped the world in Florentine luxury, and in doing so, wrapped Florence in their own deep pockets of power. Number 4. Arte di Calimala. Do not confuse the Arte di Calimala with the Wool Guild. While both dealt in cloth, their operations were vastly different, and their power stemmed from distinct sources. The Arte di Calimala, officially known as the Guild of Merchants of Foreign Cloth Refiners, focused on the ultimate luxury, taking raw, high-quality woolen cloth woven in other countries, transforming it into exquisite finished textiles, and then selling it across Europe. They were the master refiners, the quality controllers, and the international distributors of the very best money could buy. Their primary source material was fine, undyed wool cloth imported from Flanders, England, and France. These were already premium goods, but they required a Florentine touch to become truly exceptional. The Calimala merchants were not involved in the initial weaving process. Instead, they specialized in the finishing stages: fulling, dyeing, shearing, and pressing. These processes were critical. And fulling, for example, involved pounding the cloth in vats of water and fuller's earth to thicken and clean it, making it incredibly durable and smooth. Dyeing was an art form in itself, using rare and expensive pigments to achieve deep, rich colors that were unmatched anywhere else. The name Calimala came from the street in Florence where many of these merchants had their shops and workshops. This street, the Via di Calimala, was a bustling artery of commerce, filled with the sounds of hammers from the fulling mills and the shouts of merchants. The guild's members were often among the wealthiest individuals in Florence, their fortunes built on razor-thin margins from high-volume, high-value international trade. Their network was truly global for the time. Calamala merchants had agents and branch offices in major European cities like Bruges, Paris, and London. They were adept at navigating complex international trade routes, managing risks like piracy and political instability, and extending credit to foreign buyers. They were among the first Florentine guilds to establish truly international operations, moving beyond simple exports to create a complex web of distribution and finance. A typical transaction might involve purchasing raw cloth in England, shipping it to Florence for finishing, and then selling the luxurious finished product in Naples or Barcelona, all managed by a single Calamala firm. The quality of Calamala finished cloth was legendary. They perfected techniques that made their fabrics superior in color, fastness, texture, and durability. This reputation for excellence allowed them to command top prices and secure a dominant position in the luxury textile market. Their control over this niche, high-value segment of the industry gave them tremendous economic leverage. They were the true connoisseurs of cloth, and their stamp on a fabric was a guarantee of its ultimate quality. The wealth of the Calamala Guild translated directly into political power. Their members frequently held the most important positions in the Florentine government, including the office of Gonfaloniere di Giustizia, the highest office in the Republic. They brought with them not just their personal fortunes, but also their vast network of international contacts and their deep understanding of global economics. Their influence was often felt in foreign policy decisions, as they pushed for policies that protected their trade interests and opened new markets. Perhaps one of the most visible testaments to the Arte di Calamala's immense power and civic pride is their patronage of the north and east doors of the Florence baptistry. They commissioned Lorenzo Ghiberti to create the magnificent bronze doors, an undertaking that spanned decades and cost an enormous sum of money. The east doors, later dubbed the Gates of Paradise by Michelangelo, remain a masterpiece of the Renaissance, a permanent symbol of the guild's wealth, artistic taste, and commitment to the beauty of their city. This kind of artistic patronage was not just about aesthetics, it was a powerful display of economic and social standing, a way to imprint their legacy onto the very heart of Florence. The Calamala Guild maintained a strong sense of internal discipline and cohesion. They had their own court to settle disputes among members, avoiding costly litigation in public courts. They set strict rules for quality control, ensuring that no substandard product tarnished the guild's reputation. They also supported their members, offering assistance in times of hardship and ensuring continuity of business. This internal strength contributed to their external power and influence. The Arte di Calamala was a unique blend of merchant prowess and industrial refinement. They did not just sell goods, they added immense value through their specialized finishing processes. Their global reach and their focus on luxury positioned them at the very top of Florence's commercial hierarchy. They were a powerful engine of wealth for the city, dictating trends in fashion and ensuring that Florence remained synonymous with the finest textiles in Europe. Their influence was far-reaching, making them silent architects of Florentine prosperity. Number 3, Arte della Lana. If Florence had a beating heart, it was the Arte della Lana, the Wool Merchants Guild. For centuries, wool was the undisputed king of Florence's economy, and this guild controlled every single aspect of its production and trade. They were not just merchants. They were industrialists, landowners, employers of thousands, and arguably the single most influential economic force in the entire republic. Their power stemmed from their absolute command over the entire wool industry, from the raw fleece arriving at the city gates to the finished, dyed cloth being shipped across Europe. Their operations were immense. The Arte della Lana owned vast workshops, often employing hundreds of workers under one roof. These workshops were buzzing with activity: washers cleaning the raw wool, carders preparing the fibers, spinners turning them into thread, weavers operating large looms, fullers compacting the cloth, and dyers giving it vibrant colors. Each stage of the process was meticulously controlled by the guild, ensuring quality and efficiency. They imported raw wool from England and Spain, renowned for its quality, and transformed it into highly sought-after Florentine cloth. The scale of their employment was staggering. Estimates suggest that at its peak, the wool industry directly employed as much as a third of Florence's population, either in the workshops, in associated trades, or as independent contractors. This meant the arte della lana had direct influence over the livelihoods of tens of thousands of Florentine citizens. A strike by wool workers, though rare due to strict guild regulations, could cripple the city's economy and create immense social unrest. This gave the guild tremendous leverage, not just economically, but also politically. The guild hall of the Arte della Lana was one of the most prominent buildings in Florence, located near the Duomo. It was a symbol of their wealth and authority. Inside, important decisions were made, disputes between members were arbitrated, and the vast financial resources of the guild were managed. They had their own court system, their own prison for unruly workers, and their own armed guards. They were a state within a state, enforcing their own laws and maintaining order within their massive sphere of influence. The sheer volume of wealth generated by the wool trade was astronomical. Florentine wool cloth was exported across the Mediterranean to the Middle East and throughout Europe. It was used for everything from peasant tunics to noble cloaks, though the finest Florentine cloths were luxury items. This constant flow of goods meant a constant flow of gold into the city, making Florence one of the wealthiest cities in Europe. The Arte della Lana's coffers were always full, allowing them to undertake massive civic projects and exert unparalleled influence. One of the most enduring symbols of the Arte della Lana's power and piety is their patronage of the construction of the Florence Cathedral, the Duomo. They were one of the primary guilds responsible for financing this monumental undertaking, including the groundbreaking work on Brunelleschi's dome. They dedicated immense sums to the project, recognizing that the cathedral was not just a house of God, but a testament to Florentine ingenuity, wealth, and civic pride. Their lion, the Marzocco, often adorned guild property and public buildings, a subtle reminder of their pervasive presence. Many of Florence's most prominent political figures came directly from the Arte della Lana. Their wealth and their vast network of connections made them natural leaders. They often held the majority of seats in the Signoria, the ruling council of Florence. Decisions about taxation, foreign policy, and internal governance were frequently shaped by the interests of the wool merchants. For example, a new tax on imported raw materials or a trade agreement with another city-state directly impacted their bottom line, and they ensured their voices were heard. The guild also invested in infrastructure that supported their trade. They maintained roads, built bridges, and even had interests in port facilities, ensuring the smooth flow of goods to and from Florence. They were forward-thinking in their business practices, developing sophisticated accounting methods and a complex system of credit. Their vast capital allowed them to weather economic downturns better than smaller guilds. The Arte della Lana was more than just a guild. It was a powerful industrial and political machine that drove the Florentine Republic. Its members were the titans of their age, their wealth and influence felt in every corner of the city and beyond. They clothed Europe, and in doing so, they clothed themselves in unparalleled power and prestige. The wool trade was not just an industry, it was the very lifeblood of Florence, pulsating with the power of the Arte della Lana. Number 2, Arte di Calamala. The Arte di Calamala was the ultimate symbol of Florentine commercial finesse and international reach. This guild was not about producing raw materials or even weaving cloth from scratch. Instead, they specialized in the refining, finishing, and global distribution of the finest woolen cloth made elsewhere, primarily in Northern Europe. They took high-quality, raw textiles from England and Flanders, brought them to Florence, applied a uniquely Florentine touch, and then sold them across the known world for immense profit. They were the luxury brand managers of the 15th century. Imagine a roll of undyed, roughly woven wool arriving from Bruges. It was a good product, but not a great one. The Kalamala merchants saw its potential. In their workshops, the cloth would undergo a series of painstaking processes. It would be fulled, a process where the fabric was pounded in vats of water, often with special clays, to shrink it, make it denser, and give it a smoother, more uniform finish. Then came the dyeing, a secret art known only to the most skilled craftsmen. Using rare and expensive dyes like cochineal for brilliant reds or indigo for deep blues, they transformed the drab cloth into shimmering, jewel-toned masterpieces. After dyeing, the cloth might be teased, sheared, and pressed repeatedly to achieve a luxurious feel and a perfect sheen. Each step added immense value. The name Calamala itself referred to the street in Florence where many of these merchants had their shops and workshops, a vibrant hub of international commerce. This guild was unique because its members were truly global players. They did not just wait for orders, they had extensive networks of agents and correspondents in major European cities like London, Paris, and particularly Bruges, the bustling trading center of Flanders. These agents procured the raw cloth, managed shipments, and handled sales of the finished product. This international web of operations gave the Kalamala an understanding of global markets and a financial reach that few other guilds could match. The quality of Kalamala finished cloth was unparalleled. Their techniques were closely guarded secrets passed down through generations. This dedication to excellence created a brand reputation that allowed them to command top prices. And European nobility and wealthy merchants eagerly sought out Florentine finished cloth, recognizing its superior craftsmanship and luxurious feel. A single bolt of Kalamala cloth could be worth more than a small Florentine house, and the volume of their trade was substantial. This meant enormous wealth flowed into the hands of the guild members. The Arte di Calamala was not just an economic powerhouse, it was a political force. The immense wealth accumulated by its members gave them significant leverage in the Florentine government. Many Calamala merchants served multiple terms as priors, the city's highest magistrates, and often held the prestigious office of Gonfalonier di Giustizia, the standard-bearer of justice. Their intimate knowledge of international trade, diplomacy, and finance made them indispensable advisors on matters of foreign policy, taxation, and economic regulation. They shaped the city's strategic decisions to protect and expand their vast commercial interests. One of the most visible and lasting testaments to the Arte di Calamala's power and influence is their patronage of the Florence Baptistery doors. They commissioned Lorenzo Ghiberti to create the north doors, and later the east doors, which Michelangelo famously called the Gates of Paradise. This project was an undertaking of immense scale, requiring vast sums of money and decades of work. It was a clear demonstration of the guild's wealth, its commitment to civic beauty, and its profound impact on Florentine artistic and architectural patronage. These doors stand as a silent bronze monument to their legacy. The guild's internal organization was highly sophisticated. They maintained their own legal court, where disputes among members were resolved efficiently, avoiding the slower public courts. They had strict rules about quality control, ensuring that all cloth finished under their guild's name met the highest standards. They also fostered a strong sense of community and mutual support among their members, which contributed to their overall strength and resilience in the face of economic challenges. The Arte di Calamala represented the refined international face of Florentine commerce. They embodied the city's ambition to be a center of luxury and global trade, not just a producer of basic goods. Their focus on adding value, their global reach, and their relentless pursuit of quality ensured their position as one of the most powerful and influential guilds in Medici Florence. They spun gold from wool, and in doing so, they spun a web of power that covered the entire city. Number 1, Arte del Cambio. If money makes the world go round, then the Arte del Cambio, the Bankers and Money Changers Guild, held the axis of Florence in their hands. They were the undisputed financial titans, not just of Florence, but of much of Europe. Their power flowed directly from the very core of all commerce capital. The Medici family, the most famous of all Florentine dynasties, were first and foremost bankers, members of this very guild. Their immense political power stemmed almost entirely from their financial might, built on the foundations laid by the arte del cambio. In a world before standardized currency, where dozens of different coins from various city-states, kingdoms, and empires circulated, money changers were essential. They knew the value of every coin, could spot fakes, and provided the service of converting one currency to another, charging a small commission for each transaction. This fundamental service was the starting point for many banking houses. Their stalls, often located in the Mercato Nuovo, were busy hubs of currency exchange, a constant clinking of gold and silver. But the arte del cambio quickly moved far beyond simple money changing. They became sophisticated bankers, offering a wide array of financial services that were crucial for the burgeoning international trade of Florence. They accepted deposits, effectively acting as savings accounts for merchants and wealthy families. They extended loans, financing everything from a merchant's new cargo to a prince's war. They managed complex credit systems, issuing letters of credit that allowed merchants to travel across Europe without carrying large amounts of physical coin, thus greatly reducing the risk of theft. A Florentine merchant could deposit money in Florence, travel to Bruges, and withdraw funds from a branch of the same bank using a simple letter. This system revolutionized commerce. The reach of Florentine bankers was astonishing. Major banking houses, many of them members of the Arte del Cambio, established branches in every significant European city: London, Paris, Bruges, Lyon, Avignon, Rome, Naples, and even as far as Constantinople. These branches facilitated international trade, transferred funds for the Pope and various monarchs, and generated immense profits for the Florentine parent companies. The Medici Bank, for example, had over a dozen branches across Europe at its peak, handling vast sums of money for clients ranging from the King of England to the Holy Roman Emperor. The wealth amassed by these bankers was staggering. They lent money to kings and popes, often becoming indispensable to their financial operations. The Florentine banking families often financed wars, arranged marriage dowries for royalty, and even managed the finances of the entire papal states. When King Edward III of England defaulted on massive loans from Florentine banks like the Bardi and Peruzzi in the mid-14th century, it led to the collapse of these powerful banking houses, demonstrating both the immense scale of their loans and the risks involved. While the Bardi and Peruzzi fell, new banking families, like the Medici, rose to take their place, learning from past mistakes. The Arte del Cambio was the most powerful guild politically because money was power. Bankers held the city's purse strings. They underwrote public debt, financed civic projects, and provided the funds that kept the Florentine government running. Their opinions on taxation, foreign policy, and economic regulation carried enormous weight within the Signoria, the city's ruling body. Cosimo de' Medici, though he preferred to appear as a private citizen, effectively ruled Florence for decades from behind the scenes, largely because of the unparalleled financial power of the Medici Bank. He funded his allies, financially ruined his enemies, and bought political influence on an unprecedented scale. The Guild Hall of the Arte del Cambio was a formidable building reflecting the wealth and security concerns of its members. Vaults below stored vast amounts of gold and silver coin. Armed guards protected the premises. The guild had its own strict regulations governing interest rates, acceptable collateral, and ethical conduct among its members. They even had their own courts to resolve financial disputes, ensuring quick and discreet resolutions to sensitive money matters. The Arte del Cambio represented the pinnacle of Florentine economic sophistication. They transformed simple money changing into a complex international financial system that fueled not just Florence's prosperity, but also much of European commerce. Their wealth allowed them to dictate terms to kings, influence papal elections, and most importantly, control the destiny of their own republic. They were the true architects of power in Medici Florence, their influence silently shaping every major decision, every grand project, and every quiet transaction. They controlled the flow of wealth, and by doing so, they controlled everything else.